Talk to a good friend of the program, Ralph Russo of The Athletic. Ralph, what's up, buddy?
Good to see you, David. How are you, man?
Wonderful, man. I want to talk a little bit about your time here at A&M. I guess it was over a month ago. But let's talk about all this legal stuff and presidential and Trump and and Nick Saban being involved. Is whatever's happened, this coalition, can it actually spark change, or is it more just conversation?
So, yeah, a presidential commission on college sports is what seems to be on the path to happening after Nick Saban and President Trump had a little conversation in Tuscaloosa. So I think it's important to sort of to explain what a commission is not. It is not a lawmaking body. Right. And you did sort of touch on it there. Right. It's almost like a think tank with the president's sort of power and the president's approval to sort of say, hey, why don't you guys get together, talk about some of these issues and see if you can come up with solutions. And hopefully the solutions are actionable. But again, it's not a lawmaking body. It's a good idea. And I think sometimes the power of the presidency can push things along. Clearly, if the president of the United States says this is an important enough issue that I want to have a commission, then that maybe motivates some people to actually create some solutions. And maybe it also gives lawmakers in Congress, that's where the real solutions need to come from this, motivation, maybe even cover to take on this issue, right? Think about it from this perspective, David. Like, they definitely need some kind of legislation. College sports need some kind of legislation, whether the settlement passes or not. But even if the settlement passes, to sort of bolster the settlement terms, right? But there's a lot of stuff going on in this country right now, and I don't know if will the public love the idea that, wait a second, we have immigration, we have tax cuts, we have this, we have that, and you're taking on college sports Congress? Like, what is that about? So maybe a presidential commission is the president's signing off on Congress tackling the issue. But again, none of those things are probably more symbolic than they are tangible solutions that can come out of the commission. It can produce some ideas, but it can't produce a law.
One of the things that I find interesting and also inspiring, if you will, is the fact that President Trump is a sports fan. Over the last few months, we've seen him actually at college football games, the Super Bowl or NFL games, the UFC all the time. So it seems like it's not aides giving him information. It seems like he consumes the product, so he understands some of the frustrations that fans are having.
Yeah, I think there's some of that there. Now I will say this, and listen, it's not the president's job to understand the minutia of what's going on in college sports, right? But I think if you can understand even at a tangential level or a surface level, things are not great here, right? Like, I think even the people who are only dipping into it, not to the level that you and I sort of who work in it, but dip into it as fans, maybe more casually, understand that like things don't seem to be working here in a way that's maybe best for fans, in a way that's best for athletes in schools. So simply understanding that, and then getting to experts, and this is where I think a commission becomes a pretty good idea, because a commission is only as good as the people sitting on the commission, bringing experts together, some diverse thoughts of those expertise and different ways of looking at this subject and coming up with ideas. Yeah, that seems to be a good idea. I will say it's probably an idea that maybe would have been a little more effective 7 or 8 to 10 years ago. But that goes along with a lot of college sports. We are way behind the curve in terms of solutions, and that's just been a trend for 2 decades.
So I'm going to put on my college fan hat for a moment, okay? Or sports fan hat. As a sports fan, there are certain people that I respected, but I didn't really like, right? For whatever reason, because they were rivals to my team. Kobe Bryant, I love him now because of his mindset. But when he was playing, he killed the Rockets and the Mavs, so I didn't like him.
Right.
Nick Saban, same way. He killed A&M. He killed everybody in college. But I do feel like if there is someone that could probably And I do believe it. I know a lot of people think he only has Alabama in his heart, but I do believe he cares about college football in a way that if there's somebody who could probably figure it out and lead a commission / lead the next vision for college football, it is a guy like Nick Saban.
So I think you're right as far as this is concerned. I do think we don't have enough people within the space working in college sports. And that's a byproduct of just the way the whole enterprise is set up. Everybody sort of is most concerned about their thing, right? If you work in the SEC, you're most concerned about the SEC. If you work at Texas A&M, your priority is at Texas A&M, right? So everybody is sort of most concerned about protecting their space. Hence, there's a big blind spot in terms of protecting the entity at large, the entire thing of college football, right? Thing of college football. So I do think Saban being away from Alabama now, not representing Alabama, though still having Alabama in his heart, it's good to have Saban and other people who are thinking about the entirety and don't have to just prioritize whatever is in their backyard. So is Nick Saban the right guy? Listen, I worry a little bit that maybe Nick's agenda is a little outdated in terms of what he thinks should be progress and what actually is progress. And we're at a point where you can't dial back a lot of this stuff. Like you can maybe put some guardrails around transfer portal and move some of that stuff back. But the people have to understand the players are getting paid now, right? We're starting with that. That's a starting point. Now we have to figure out how to get them paid properly, how to get them paid fair market value, which is going to be a tough thing, how to allow some movement while also not infringing upon their rights. So I do worry a little bit about like where Saban is in terms of, is his vision for college football a little outdated and would end up standing in the way of some of the progress that's already been made.
So I'm going to sound outdated, and I'm going to simplify things too much. I did this yesterday on the show. I'll do it again. Like, can it be as simple as, figuring out the transfer portal part of it and let NIL take care of itself? And oh, by the way, let NIL actually be NIL, which is name, image, and likeness, which it really isn't. We act like it is, but it is a pay-for-play model based on, I guess, what you can get from whatever sponsor, but it's the whole thing is just, it's not real.
Yeah, NIL became de facto salaries, right? That's what it transitioned into. And yes, I think that the idea now is with this revenue sharing system, that really is going to be the salary, right? That we are literally going to have a salary structure for these players. And then the question becomes, is there NIL through third parties and collectives that are still available to these athletes? And can that be regulated in a way where it's not just, here's $500,000, sign this football, right? Like, and I don't know if what the answer is on that. Can it be regulated? I don't know. I think we're going to find out. I do think the first part of what you said is super important there. I really do believe, like, it's not a simple thing to fix. And maybe I'm oversimplifying it, but I think if you could rein in the movement and the transferring, get it to we're in a too much ice cream phase where it comes to play. Like, I think that the players definitely deserved more freedom, and now they probably have a little too much, even for their own sakes. If we can regulate the transfer movement a little more, get that down to a more manageable level, then you bring the free agency market down, right? Because these players aren't able to renegotiate every 6 months. So I do wonder if at the core of all of this is just get the transfer rules under control, and the money and that stuff sort of flows with it, and we settle into a more reasonable system.
A couple years ago, it was not trendy, but it was a topic that, hey, at some point we're going to have two conferences or some kind of world like that where it's not all the ACC, the Big 12. I know you had a conversation with the ACC recently. Do you still think that's in the next 5-10 years, like a world where it's an NFL model with a couple of conferences, or maybe it just kind of looks different? We're kind of already heading that way with the four, but how do you see that playing out over the next decade?
Yeah. So if we keep moving on a linear path, right, where we have come from, think of like when Texas A&M joined the SEC over the last 10 years, we have had consolidation and we're moving in the direction you're talking about, right? Whether it's four conferences, two conferences, a super league of 60 teams, a super league of 40 teams, a super league of 32 teams, maybe Big Ten and SEC are the AFC and NFC. Like that seems to be the path we're moving along. And it's funny that you asked me this question, Dave, because I literally was just talking to somebody in the industry about this, like right before we zoomed in here, about this idea that the reason why I'm not sure we're going that direction is there are so many outside factors in college sports that could influence college sports that may change the trajectory, right? Maybe it is uh, federal legislation, and part of the federal legislation is, hey guys, y'all can't keep doing this with the conferences, right? Maybe literally the government steps in and says, this is ridiculous. You're hurting other schools. You can't keep doing this with the conferences. Maybe it's wherever the media industry goes, and to a certain degree, that bubble bursts a little bit or plateaus, and there's not as much media money involved, and that changes the trajectory and where the money goes. I just think that, listen, higher education's in a weird spot right now. There's just a lot of factors that could bleed into what the future of college sports are that aren't necessarily directly tied to college sports. So it makes it hard to predict the future.
Talking to Ralph Russo here on TexAgs Live. Ralph, let's talk about A&M this year. You met with
football. All right.
Yeah, actual football. What I love talking about, right?
Yeah.
You met with Coach Elko not long ago. You were here for one of the last spring conferences, and what do you think, man? Like, I think a lot of people believe in him here, and I think they do. This is a really interesting year to me because they could be better, but that schedule makes me wonder if they're going to be better, at least from a wins and losses perspective. They've added some nice pieces. If you see growth here or there, long-winded question. What do you think about A&M in 2025?
Yeah, listen, I do think Elko seems still to be like his career is still short enough that yes, if you want to say that, the jury's still out on what exactly he will be as a Texas A&M coach. Well, of course, he's had 2 years at Duke and 1 year at Texas A&M. You're more than welcome to still be cautiously optimistic about where he can take this program. In the short term, yeah, I kind of think you nailed it. Like they overachieved a little bit last year, but the record ended up being familiar, right? Ultimately, you got a season that looked similar to other recent seasons, but probably felt a little better. Overall, it felt like it was a good beginning. Like this offensive line, which is really veteran and huge. Interesting to see that they didn't go portal shopping and they decided Marcel Reed was their guy, right? I think that that's just an interesting statement on who the kid is, what his talent is, and where you are going forward. You bring in a bunch of portal receivers that hopefully creates some explosive plays that you were desperately lacking last year. Your running backs get healthy. The defensive front, maybe not as good, but hopefully you do a little better in the back end, right? And I think it all adds up to what you said, which is like, I see progress. This looks like a pretty good roster. But then I look at the roster compared to the very top of the SEC, and I find myself going, oh, yeah, you need at least one more year. You need at least one more full recruiting class, and your freshmen in this recruiting class to get older and develop. Like you're just still like a year away from really banging heads against the top of the SEC. And then the one other thing, which I'm sure your viewers aren't going to love, but what does the dynamic of, okay, we need a little patience. We're not quite up to the top of the SEC, but Texas is at the top of the SEC. And does that create a certain angst among Aggies that makes them want to hit the fast forward button on this rebuild. And hey, this is not good enough. Like, we can't be 9-3 and be satisfied when Texas is contending for a national championship. I think that dynamic of what is going on in Austin and what is going on in College Station is always interesting to me. And I wonder if it accelerates some of the angst in College Station.
Ralph, great stuff, man. Thanks so much for making time. Let's do it soon, okay?
Very much appreciate you, David.